The year was 1935, and two brothers get death in Hazard, Kentucky slayings. John C. Gamble and Andrew Gamble, who were brothers, must go to the electric chair for the murder of Joe Walker and Richmond Combs. It was decided by a jury in the Perry Circuit Court last week. The Gambles are from Knott County, Kentucky. This was the first death verdict by a Perry County jury since 1912, when Bert Sloan was convicted for the murder of N. G. Kingings, mine physician, and later electrocuted at Eddyville, Kentucky. The jury in the Gamble case deliberated less than an hour. Walker and Combs were shot to death at the home of Miss Cora Deaton, and Cora is the sister of the Gambles. North of Hazard in Walkertown on the night of January 17th, 1934. It was the contention of the Commonwealth that the two men had been killed following a card game in which the Gambles were losers. Testimony also was presented to show that Combs carried a large sum of money when he went to the Deaton home, and that only $1.10 was found on him after the slayings. Bloodstains were found in his pockets. Combs was shot 5 times and Walker 4 times. Miss Cora Deaton, sister of the Gambles, and Miss Bertha Gamble, wife of Andrew Gamble, are under indictment in connection with the slayings. They are at liberty under bonds of $5,000. And another article that was found titled Brothers Given Death Sentence in Perry County. John C. Gamble and Andrew Gamble, brothers, were sentenced to death in the electric chair by a jury in the Perry Circuit Court at Hazard Tuesday afternoon. They were convicted of the murder of Joe Walker and Richmond Combs, who were shot to death at the home of Miss Cora Deaton in Walkertown the night of January the 17th. The Commonwealth charged robbery was the motive for the crime. It was the first death sentence imposed in Perry County since 1912. And another account, brothers given death sentence. John and Andrew Gamble, brothers, were given death sentences in Perry Circuit Court for killing Joe Walker and Richmond Combs. And it was the first death verdict since 1912 that was given. Bert Sloan was electrocuted at Eddyville for the killing of N. G. Kingings, my physician. That's not what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about Joe Walker and Richmond Combs murder because of a card game. One of the victims we're going to be talking about, Richmond Combs, and I found on the 1930 Hazard Perry County census, he is listed as the head of household, and he was 34 at the time, and this was in 1930. And it shows his wife as Melissa as being 27. And the children listed, Angeline, Elena, Myrtle, Andy, and Godey, and his mother-in-law, Mary Stamper. And on here's the confusing thing, is the dates for on his tombstone. It says he was born in October of 1896 and his death was June 1935, and that he was 38 years old. And this was found in the Cornett Cemetery at Darfork in Perry County. That's where he is buried, beside his spouse, Melissa Stamper Combs. And she lived till 1977. But the date on this, I believe, is wrong. With all the research I've done on this, it should be 1934 in January. And on another census, and this was the census in 1910 in Perry County, and in the Combs household, we see young Richmond was 14 years old, and his dad's name was Jerry Combs. He was listed as the head of household at 36 years old. His mother's name, Mariah, I guess that's how you say it, 40 years old. And the children, Leanne, Richmond, who I just said, Laura, Susan, Jane, Willie. And that's all the names on here I can pronounce. I can't really read it that good. And I found a marriage certificate listed for a Richmond Combs and Sissy Stamper. So Sissy must have been Melissa's nickname. Age of husband, 22 years old. Age of wife, 23. Husband's place of birth, which is Richmond. He was born in Perry County. And his wife, her place of birth is also listed in Perry County and Hazard. Names of parents for the husband, Jerry Combs and Mariah Combs. Names of parents for the wife, and it's very hard to read. A Stamper. That's all I can read is Stamper. Maybe you can figure out how to say those names. But occupation of husband, common laborer. Occupation of wife, housework. And this marriage took place on May the 5th, 1917 in Perry County. And the other victim, his name is listed as Joe Blacksnake Walker on Find a Grave. Birth date, December the 8th, 1889. Death, January 16th, 1934. So that made him 44 years old. And I believe the death date on his tombstone is correct, unlike Richmond's date of death on his tombstone. He is buried in the Riverside Cemetery in Hazard in Perry County, Kentucky. His parents are listed as John Waynfield Wayne Walker. His mother's name is listed as Hetty Jane Simpson Walker. His siblings are listed as the Reverend John Walker, John Kenner J.K. Combs, William W. Billy Combs, Isabel Fairchild Bell Walker Napier, Sis Walker Duff, Preston Press Walker, and Russell Walker, and spouse Rhoda Gent Walker, and she is also buried at Riverside. And on the 1900 census, Perry County, and we're going to look for the Walkers. I see a 12-year-old Joseph Walker, and the head of household is listed as Waisel, and his mother's listed as Hetty. And this is very hard to read, the writing on here. He was listed as 12 years old on that census. And we have a marriage certificate for Joe and Rhoda. And this is to certify that on the 26th day of August, 1909, that Joe Walker and Rhoda Gent at Joe Duff's in the county of Perry, in the presence of Jerry Walker, Joe Duff, and Miss Ira Cornett. Signed by J. Walker. That's what's listed on the marriage certificate. And I found two of the children who had passed, who were children of Joe and Rhoda, and her name was Della Walker, and she was only 7 years old when she passed. And she died August the 4th, 1925. The cause of death, which is really hard to read on the death certificate, first says pulmonary tuberculosis, and it's kind of marked out. And underneath it says enteritis. Duration, it says a month. So their child had been sick for about a month when she passed. And she is also buried at Riverside. And another child I found for Joe and Rhoda, her name was Zola Walker. And her date of death is listed as December the 7th, 1925. And she was only 14 years old, 6 months, and 26 days when she passed. And it's listed in Perry County, Kentucky, name of father, Joe Walker and Rhoda Gent. Her birthplace is listed on her child's death certificate as Letcher County. And the cause of death is listed as typhoid fever. So typhoid was going around. It was an epidemic in that time in 1925. Contributory says hemorrhage and perforation for 5 days. And the other one, typhoid fever, says 2 months on the how long she had it. She's also buried in Riverside Cemetery in Hazard. And on the 1920 Kentucky census, we see Joseph Walker as the head of household, 32 years old. And we see his spouse, Rhoda. The children are listed as Zola, Astor, Frona, Omer, and Gladys. Township, Walker's Branch in Perry County. And he is listed as a farmer on the 1920 census. And on the 1930 census is listed as Joe Walker. And he is 41 years old, and he is listed as a coal miner on this census. Wife, Rhoda, and the children are listed as Frona, Homer, Herbert, Joe, and Astor in the household. And I found a registration card for the draft for Joe. And it's listed as Joe Walker. His home address, Hazard, Kentucky. Date of birth, September of 1887. And it says he was born in Hazard. Occupation, listed as miner, employed by the Columbus Mining Company at Hazard. And who do you claim as exemption? It says wife and 4 children, and it has Joe's signature. And it says he was medium. He wasn't tall or short, but listed as medium, stout, and black hair. Bald, it says no. The crime was committed by the Gamble brothers. And on the 1910 census, Gamble is spelled Gambrell, Gambrel instead of Gamble. And Cora is listed as a daughter, and the crime took place in Cora's house, and her last name was Deaton at the time. And we have Walter as a son, John, Ari, Andrew, Garlus or Harless is listed as a son, French is listed as a son, and Pearlie is listed as a daughter in the household in 1910. And there is no record of John or Andrew Gamble ever being electrocuted in Eddyville, but they are listed on censuses as inmate at the State Reformatory at LaGrange. In 1940, Andrew is listed as 36 years old and an inmate at LaGrange in the Kentucky State Reformatory in Kentucky. Andrew Gamble lived to be 56 years old. His date of death is May the 3rd, 1960, and he passed away in LaGrange, Oldham County, Kentucky. Birth date listed on the Find a Grave is February 25th, 1904, and he was from Hyman in Knott County. And he is buried at the Valley of Rest Cemetery in LaGrange, Kentucky. On his obituary in the Courier-Journal, it says Andrew Gamble, 56 years old, died Tuesday in the Mallory Taylor Memorial Hospital here after an illness of several weeks. And Andrew and Bertha are listed on the 1930 census as being husband and wife. And his brother, John Gamble, Andrew's brother, is also listed as an inmate on the 1940 census. And you can find his death certificate. He died in Dayton, Ohio, in the county of Monty, Monty. And he lived to be 50 years old. Date of death, January the 20th, 1950. Divorced, a coal miner from Perry County. Cause of death, pulmonary, the THE. And he is buried in the Hyman Cemetery in Hyman, Kentucky.